Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Greetings, everybody out there in podcast land. I'm Kelly Bass, and it's my honor to host Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly chat with chefs and restaurateurs who have helped make the Mid-South dining scene one of the most vibrant in the country. I am a foodie from way back, much longer than that term's even been around, and I spent the better part of 30 years writing restaurant reviews and features about restaurants and restaurant people for Little Rock, Arkansas-based newspapers and magazines. And now I just talk about food rather than write about it. And I tell you, that's a swap I'll take every time. My guest today, it's our 61st episode of Heaping Spoonful, is Chuck Taylor. He and his wife, Pam, own and operate Taylor Steakhouse just outside Dumas in southeastern Arkansas. So, hey, welcome to Heaping Spoonful, Chuck.
Yeah, great to be here.
Well, we're really glad you are. You know, your story, goes way back, but it starts, at least the public version, with your parents opening the original Taylor's Grocery in 1954. But, you know, anyone who assumes you just kind of rode their coattails to an easy success would be badly mistaken. And we'll get to that story in a bit. But, you know, that is where it started. And I'm curious to know your memories of that grocery store. And is that a place that you started hanging out and helping from the time you were just a kid?
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you kind of grew up there. And it was a grocery store, but I think I've heard you say before that your mom was making barbecue all along. So you always had a prepared food component as opposed to just being a grocery store?
Well, the original grocery store didn't. You know, the one it wasn't built in 1954. Actually, it was just an old shotgun house converted into a grocery store. It's real small. And then they built a new store. My parents did, I guess, early 60s. And it was a bigger store. And they had cold cuts, and, you know, the farm hands would come in and get cold cuts and bread and stuff like that. We weren't preparing any sandwiches then. We didn't start preparing sandwiches till the third store, same spot we're in now.
Right.
You know, kind of about in the early 80s, you know, early to mid 80s.
Right. And that was some barbecue. So and I guess maybe you made other sandwiches too. Tell us about that barbecue.
Well, the barbecue was hickory smoked. Mother cooked it we had a big old propane tank that had been converted into a smoker.
Right.
And it's slow cooks. You'd put them on in the morning and cook them all day long and take them up right before we closed in the evening, you know, and let them cool down overnight and slice them the next day. You know, and then once she got them sliced, she, you know, would put them in a pot and pour barbecue sauce on them and slow cook it some more.
Right, like people who aren't familiar with Arkansas, and particularly with the part of Arkansas that you live and work. I mean, it's a farming area, and there's a lot of people who work hard in the farming world, and they want some good lunch. And there's not a ton, or at least particularly back then, there weren't a ton of options. So I'm sure, other than buying groceries, that brought a good solid business into your family's store to get the barbecue and other sandwich type stuff. So
right. We sold a lot of barbecue. Yes, we sold a lot of barbecues and a lot of Polish sausage sandwiches and a lot of cold cut sandwiches. You know, roast beef and ham and cheese. You know, and the farmers would come by a bunch of them for their hand. You know, and we would have people drive out from town, you know, to buy the sandwiches. We have people drive from out of town to get the barbecue.
Yeah. So that was I mean, obviously, y'all are watching what's selling and realizing that maybe the prepared foods are starting to pick up more steam. So it sounds like you kind of gradually transitioned, maybe took out a shelf or two, put in a table or two. Was it fairly slow transition from, grocery store with a little bit of food to more food service with some groceries, or how did that kind of play out?
Well, it was slow because, at that particular time period, the supermarkets were gaining more business and the old country grocery stores were losing business,
Yeah.
as far as the groceries were concerned, because we couldn't compete on price, with
Sure.
the bigger supermarkets and stuff. So, and we had a lot of people that lived out in the country that worked on the farms, and as the farms got more mechanized with less people having to work on the farm, it just took a lot of people out of the country, and and
Sure.
just didn't have the people to draw from anymore. As far as for a grocery store, and it was just the writing on the wall was, hey, we got to do something to stay in business, and the grocery store business is not going to do it anymore. So
Sure.
we started cooking other things. We put in a grill and spin a hood and all that stuff, started cooking hamburgers, po' boys, paninis, Philly steaks, fish,
Yeah.
shrimp, quite a few things, and our lunch business, started to boom. So we started to take out grocery chefs and putting in eating tables.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you were watching the market trends, and you were also watching what people were wanting to do. And again, we know a lot of folks in Arkansas listen to Heaping Spoonful, but we figure there's folks all the way around the world listening to it, hopefully out in outer space. But what one people may not know about Arkansas is that it is cheese dip land. You don't have to be a Mexican restaurant to do cheese dip, and it looks like somewhere along the way, long before you became a renowned steakhouse, you guys got the cheese dip thing going, and that has been a big deal. It's still a big deal, right?
We still sell a lot of cheese dip. I mean, cheese dip, I guess what you would say was probably our first claim to fame,
Right.
because we were
Is that just a
renowned
recipe
for our
that
cheese dip.
That a recipe you guys developed? Because there's a lot of people, I tell you, that they think cheese dip is a big old block of Rotel a big old block of Velveeta with some Rotel in it. And cheese dip, I bet your cheese dip is done with a white sauce and some cheese and some spices. And was that a recipe that you guys developed?
Yes, we did. We developed it and we tweaked it over the years to make it better. Each time we get an idea, maybe this might make it a little better, add something, take out something. So we tweaked it until we thought we got it right, and everybody wants our recipe, but we don't give that out.
I do not blame you a bit. But then again, along the way, I mean, you guys you're selling a lot of cheese dip. You're selling all kinds. I mean, you've got a really broad menu. But I was telling you before we started recording that I watched a really great video that I encourage anybody to go seek out. That's with you and your wife, Pam. It was a video that accompanied your induction to the Steakhouse Hall of Fame. And of course, we hadn't come close to talking about steaks yet, but we're going to get there. But it was a really well done video. It's about 12 minutes, and I watched it twice actually, and had some subtitles along the way to kind of set people up for the next chapter. And one of them was Leap of Faith. Because when you and Pam decided to feature not just steaks, but high quality steaks, and you're in a very blue collar town, near a blue collar town like Dumas, I mean, that was a leap of faith. But it was something you felt like if you wanted to stay viable, you had to change your formula.
Well, we live in such a rural area, Dumas only being, it's even quite 5,000 people now. I told Pam, I said, we've got to have people drive here from other places. We got to have people from McGee, Monticello, Star City, everywhere, because our small town cannot support a restaurant, like a steakhouse.
Right.
So, yeah, it was definitely very much so a leap of faith, because we had to kind of depend on people from out of town, and, we had so many people in Dumas tell us, or didn't tell us, but told other people we was making a terrible mistake, that, we'd never make it. We just,
right.
we couldn't make a go of it because of what we were trying to do. Dry aged beef, dry aged prime beef in southeast Arkansas. I mean,
but the thing that made you make that move, so you saw that even though you were making great food, and a variety of food from Philly cheesesteaks to, fish to whatever, it just wasn't going to be enough to keep you going. Did you just come to the conclusion that the model you had was not sustainable over the long haul before you decided to do the steakhouse?
Well, talking about the lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I guess lunch is, yeah.
Okay. You got to sell a lot of lunch to make any money.
Right. Tickets are low, relative.
That's exactly right. We needed to get our average ticket price higher, and I didn't know one way to do it, and that's to have especially if dry age,
Yeah.
About the dry aging, how it goes. You lose between the trim and the shrinkage, you lose 50% of your weight.
And you got to wait a while.
Yeah, and you got to wait a while, and you got to have big inventory. Yeah.
Sure.
So it's it was definitely a leap of faith, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And when I watched the video, I mean, I heard your wife say that she was nervous about it, and then apparently your banker thought it was a bigger leap of faith than he was willing to make. But
well, we got a great banker. We got a great banker, and he's been so good to us. It's not just him.
Right.
Most all bankers are leery of loaning money for a restaurant. The restaurants are the most likely businesses to go out of business in the nation. I mean, restaurants are, more of them go out of business than any other business.
And that was before COVID or anything. That was just in the regular world. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you guys, again, you made the commitment, and we'll talk a little bit more about what came before it, because this wasn't just something you did out of the blue because you knew what you were doing. But once you got Taylor's Steakhouse opened, I believe, in 2012, and again, it wasn't an instant hit because the word had to spread. So you guys just had to kind of. Pam said it was a nerve-wracking time, but you kept telling her, "Let's stick with the plan. Let's just keep with the plan, and things are going to be okay." But that must have been a pretty nervous time.
Right. It wasn't it didn't start out as a hit. My thoughts were, since we had such a great reputation for lunch, that it would carry over into the evening business. I was wrong. I mean, we had to build a whole new clientele.
Right, because
it's basically like starting over from scratch.
Right, because what you were serving was a different price point and a different meal than what they were coming to get at lunch. But
exactly.
Everybody who has success in business, often they can look back on a thing or a few things that kind of helped them turn the corner. And I've leaned in on this video because it was so well done and it's so thorough. And I believe Pam mentioned that somebody from Pine Bluff whose either son or daughter worked at KTV, which is the ABC affiliate in Little Rock, which is about 90 miles from Dumas. Is that about right?
That's exactly right.
Okay. That the parents came and loved it when and then let their son or daughter, I don't know who the person was, and and you all got a chance to go be on a morning show, maybe on a Saturday morning show, and talk about your restaurant. Was that again, when you look back on it, was that kind of a way that the word got spread more quickly than it had before?
Yes. People from all over the state seen it, and yes, it really kind of kick-started us. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, and
but we got
great.
calls from all over the state making reservations, after that.
Yeah, and that's great. And I'll tell you, we're fast-forwarding a bit now, but going to eat at Taylor's Steakhouse in Dumas has become a thing. It has become something that people strike out to do. They know it's great food. They get in their car. They get in a party bus. Some of them get in their private plane and fly down to the airport in Dumas and come do it. So, I mean, that must be super gratifying that you got these folks who are, like you said, you knew you had to have that to be successful with this model, but it's got to be hugely satisfying to see these people come from all over.
Absolutely. They come from all over Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma. You just name it,
Yeah.
And
I tell you,
it's gratifying and humbling. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I got on, these days, and one of my intros I do for these is that I was writing restaurant reviews before you had internet, so you didn't have TripAdvisor or Yelp or any of that stuff. And now anybody can be a restaurant reviewer, and that's good because they give feedback, from experiences. But I jumped on TripAdvisor and I read a thing where a guy said he was wanting a nice date night with his wife, and they jumped in his little airplane and flew down 125 miles to Dumas and got there, and the courtesy van battery was dead that was there at the airport, and so they called the restaurant, and Pam got in the car and came and picked him up and took him to the restaurant. And and they were like, "You talk about customer service." The co-owner of this place got in her car and came and picked us up. But
you make it to the airport. You make it to the airport, we'll get you here.
Yeah, and Pam wasn't able to join us today on the interview, but I mean, she's obviously a big part of the business, and is she somewhat the face of the business, the one who greets people and makes them feel at home?
She is.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, because she's prettier than I am.
You know what? I've seen your pictures, and I agree. What's the seating? What's your seating capacity? So, how many folks can you?
100.
Sit down at. Okay, so
100 people.
Not tiny, but certainly not a huge place. So I think if you want to come to Taylor's Steakhouse, and we talked before we started, my wife and I will come and make a reservation. Right? That's the way you want to do it.
I highly recommend it unless you want to wait a couple of hours to be seated.
Right, I understand. Because you're only open. Are you open 3 nights a week? Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's limited. But there, and again, I've been in the Little Rock food scene for a long, long time, and there's other smaller places in smaller Arkansas towns that have also become kind of a thing. I've gone up because my in-laws are from Stuttgart to Desart and eat it at Dondi's, catfish at Dondi's. Now the Grumpy Rabbit in Lone Oak's kind of a big deal. Jones Barbecue in Mariana won a James Beard Award. But again, the reason people are willing to travel to those places and to Taylor's is because the food is so good. And that starts with your steak. So tell us about your decision, which is not a cheap decision, to say we're only serving prime beef. How did you decide to put a steak in the ground, quote unquote steak in the ground, about serving prime beef?
Okay, if I'm gonna have people drive here from long distances, I better have something special.
Right.
And prime is special.
Prime is special. A very low percentage of beef that gets served in a home or a restaurant, like 6% is prime.
Well, it's been at times, it's been down to 2 and 3%.
Okay.
Prime,
Yeah.
Because, I know because of the pricing. And I say, why is my price so high? And they said, well, it's only grading out 2% now. I said, oh.
Right. Okay, well, I understand. And we'll talk a whole lot more about your meat and the way you prepare your meat and other things, because you're not just a steak-only restaurant by any means. But anyway, it's time to take a short break here on Heaping Spoonful. So hang on just a minute, everybody, and we'll be back with more from Chuck Taylor of Taylor's Steakhouse just outside the town of Dumas in southeastern Arkansas.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
Hey, welcome back to Heaping Spoonful as we continue our conversation with Chuck Taylor. Now let's expand on your steak program a little bit. Tell our listeners what cuts you offer and general, I know it varies a little bit, but generally what size they are, because these are not tiny little steaks.
Okay, we'll start with the wet aged. I do a bone out, a prime bone out ribeye, wet aged, 8-ounce filet wet aged, and a bone in tender, 12-ounce wet aged. And on the dry aged side, have a bone in ribeye, which is 18 to 24 ounces. Have porterhouse for 2, which is 30 to 34 ounces. T-bone, 24, 28 ounces. And what we call a Taylorville strip. It's actually a New York strip, well trimmed.
Right.
8 to 10 ounces. Because I trim all the veins and stuff out of it, make sure it's clean. So you don't have any waste with that strip at all.
Oh, it sounds good. I'm telling you, I'm almost drooling up here.
that should cover all of them, I think.
Right. So we know that Benny Keith sponsors Heaping Spoonful and that you're a Benny Keith customer, but you don't get your steaks from them. Where do you get your steaks?
I do buy some of my steak from Benny Keith.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
the man in charge doesn't know that because he thought you got them from Chicago.
Well, I do get some of them from there, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My primals, now all of my fillets I get from Benny Keith.
I see. And then just some of the other places. I
would buy all of it from Benny Keith if they would, they I don't guess I need to say much about that.
Well, they just
everything
you need.
Right. I used to deal with a guy from Benny Keith, and he's no longer there, and they haven't replaced him with anybody. So I don't really have anybody to deal with on my beef.
Well, we're going to have to work on that. And I know people up here, so we'll see what we can do. So are you getting shipments of beef on a fairly constant basis? Because I do remember, basically you cook, if you run out of steaks, you run out of steaks, and people are just going to have to wait till you get some more. Do you have a pretty regular shipments on them?
I get them weekly.
Weekly?
I only cut a certain amount of the dry aged stuff each week. Some of the stuff's very limited. The porterhouses are very limited, and the strips are very limited.
Right.
I hardly ever run out of a bone-in ribeye. I don't think I ever have, as a matter of fact. And the T-bones, I don't think I ever run out of them. The porterhouse and the strip will be the ones that I run low on. And I recommend if somebody's coming on a Saturday to call and reserve one.
Yep, I've done that at Doe's and Little Rock, so I know how that goes on the porterhouses for sure. So talk about your aging process. So you have the wet aging for some cuts, you have the dry aging for some cuts. Just tell us what that's about, because I think people know about aged beef, but they have no clue about how it gets done.
Well, the wet aged is aged in the cryovac in its own juices. It sits in there for 30 to 60 days in the cryovac. And that's the aging process for the wet age. The dry age is taken out of the cryovac. Of course, I tell everybody I like my beef aged before I age it. I like it 30 to 60 in the cryovac. Then I like to take it out and then dry age it 30 to 50 days.
So you got some serious age on some of those ones after they've been,
Yeah, I've done, right now, we're so busy, I really like doing some for longer periods, but I'm so busy right now that I can't keep up with what I'm hardly with what I'm selling. So I don't have any highly aged. I have done some, 120 days.
But when you want to eat them, you gotta cook them. So
that's right. That's right. So I haven't been able to do any of the highly aged. I just don't have the room or the capacity or it's just not happening right now.
Right. Because you got the demand. I understand. So now let's talk about how you cook them, because again, it's not the same exact way that most steak restaurants cook them. You got a different sort of oven, at least different from me. So talk about your oven, talk about the heat, talk about how you cook your steaks.
It's a broiler. I broil them.
Okay.
And it's just like 1,800 degrees at the source.
Wow.
So it's hitting the meat at 1,000 degrees.
So it doesn't take a whole long time.
Well, no, depending on the doneness, anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes, to cook a steak.
Right. And I guess that's all about the time. So your team knows that if someone says medium rare, it's this time. If they say medium, it's this time. Let's hope they're not saying medium well, but they're saying rare, it's this time.
You can't really go by time because your filet cooks different than your ribeye. Your ribeye cooks different from your porterhouse or T-bone. Strip cooks different from any of them. So they all cook different.
So they just have to know the look and feel of them, and
they know they've got not even they to it. I cook every steak.
You cook every steak.
I cook every steak.
So
I cut.
Wow, that's.
Age them. I cut them. I trim them, and I cook them.
Wow. Well, that is something people need to know, because so you just got it down. You based on what the cut is, based on the thickness of it, based on how people order it, how long to leave it in there and get it out at the right, because everybody.
Excuse me. Then
y'all finish them.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, we're doing this by phone, and so we can't see each other. But no, so again, talk through the process, because I know it's kind of a salt and pepper thing, but you have a butter finish on them, I believe.
I have a compound butter that
right.
We heat our plates to 425 degrees, and we put the plates up under the warmer, and by the time we put the steaks in, then we put the compound butter in the plates, let the compound butter melt in the plates, and once the steak's taken out of the broiler, it's put in the plate and rolled in the butter.
Man, and just like you're not giving out your cheese dip recipe, you're not giving out your compound butter recipe either, are you?
No, as a matter of fact, it's locked in a safe.
I love it.
2 people know it, me and Pam and I. That's it.
Oh, that's it. It's just y'all. That is great. Well, since you cook every steak, we need to keep you healthy and feeling good. I know that you were, again, this is not by happenstance. You were quite a cook before you ever got your own steakhouse. That you were, for, again, people who don't know, southeastern Arkansas is major duck hunting territory. And I read that you used to cook for folks at hunting lodges. So did you start perfecting some of your methods of steak and other things while you were doing that?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the blackened duck recipe was born at a duck lodge.
Right.
Where
it wasn't like, yeah.
So the guy kept coming in wanting me to cook. Said, "Can you cook a duck to where it tastes good?" I said, "Well, I don't know, but I'll give it a shot." So I tried it blackened, cooked medium rare, and absolutely tastes like a filet mignon. Has no livery aftertaste or anything. Of course, you're not supposed to cook duck well done anyway.
Sure.
A lot of people don't know that and don't realize that.
Right. And you have a beautiful website, and it's the pictures of that blackened duck, which I believe you do as an appetizer and also as a main dish. And it is good looking duck for sure. And that kind of leads me to my next subject, which is that, yes, you're a Taylor Steakhouse, but you don't have just steaks on your menu. Here's a question I'm just curious about, and just estimating in your own just mind, what percentage of your guests do you think order steak?
90%.
90, right. And some people love the duck, but you got 10 fish and seafood choices. You got, again, all that awesome looking duck breast. You got a dry aged pork chop. So tell us what makes up the bulk of that 10% that's not steaks? What are things that people love?
There's not one thing in particular that's going to sell more than any of the others. I mean, we have pastas, and of course we have blackened fish, fried fish, shrimp. I wouldn't say one thing sells any more than another when you get away from the steaks.
Right, and Arkansas is also fried catfish territory, so I'm sure there's a certain number of people who like that. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm a big crab cake fan, but I see you have shrimp cakes. Is that just is it made kind of like a crab cake just with shrimp?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I came up with that recipe too right before we opened.
Yeah, that sounds great. And then you've got, I see again on TripAdvisor and Yelp, people bragging about the desserts. I know there's bread pudding. So that bread pudding is popular, or do you have other desserts too, right?
The only other dessert we have is a cheesecake.
Okay.
Well, other than the regular bread pudding and chocolate bread pudding. Pam makes the bread puddings herself, and they're a must if you're going to come to Taylor. Well,
I am putting it on my list. Well, Chuck, I really appreciate your time. I'm look forward to watching the continued upward trajectory for Taylor Steakhouse. I look forward to my wife Ashley and I coming down and joining you. I have lots of friends who've made the trek, and again, it's nice that y'all have really become a thing and a popular spot to come. But people would not be coming if the food wasn't good. So congratulations on that. And I tell you what, everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in to Heaping Spoonful. I thank you. I thank Benny Keith Foods. And remember, we put 2 episodes of Heaping Spoonful up every month. It's the first Tuesday, and the third Tuesday. So please check them out. Look for the new ones. Catch up on ones that you've missed. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.